Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're jumping straight into something, something we all do, but maybe don't think about enough. Reflection.
Mm-hmm.
We're using some really fascinating thoughts from one of you, a listener, who's kind of navigating these two worlds, keeping reflections private versus, putting them out there.
Exactly. And it's
Mhm.
quite a rich landscape they've laid out for us, thinking about privacy, legacy, accountability, that sense of integrity in our own thoughts.
Yeah, and it's not just the philosophical side, is it? This listener's really digging into the practical stuff, too. Mental well-being, personal growth, and even how reflection helps us sort through all the information noise.
Right.
Which honestly immediately made me think of Tiago Forte's code model. That feels super relevant here.
It really does. And what's cool is that our listener is actually experimenting with this, using AI even to turn reflections into podcast videos.
Wow. Okay.
So yeah, our goal today is to really unpack all of this. Look at the pros and cons, the nuances of keeping things private versus sharing them. Just trying to offer some clarity for our listeners' own reflective journey.
Okay, great. So let's start big picture. Why, fundamentally, is reflection so important? Why do we need it?
Well, think about it. Life just happens at us, right? A lot. Reflection is that crucial step where we take raw experience and turn it into understanding. It's how we move from just reacting to actually processing, learning.
So it's the engine for making sense of things.
Pretty much, yeah. It's fundamental for mental clarity, emotional balance. It's constantly shaping who we are, who we become.
Right, turning chaos into some kind of coherence.
Exactly. And it's absolutely key for discernment. Sorting wisdom from noise, truth from just gut reactions, values from impulses. It helps us sift through everything.
So it sharpens our sense of self, but also maybe helps us understand the world and others better too.
Definitely. And bringing back Tiago Forte's code capture, organize, distill, express, it's amazing how closely that maps onto our internal world, doesn't it?
How so?
Well, we capture feelings, insights, questions. We organize them, maybe unconsciously at first. We distill the core meaning, the aha moment, and then we express it, even if that expression is just formulating the thought clearly in our own head. That internal expression is vital for self-awareness.
Okay, so it's much more than just, say, keeping a diary. It's like building what did our listener call it? The architecture of inner life.
I love that phrase. Yeah.
It gives it a real structure,
Yeah.
doesn't it? Okay, so let's go into that private architecture first. What's the real power in keeping reflections just for ourselves?
I think the word that comes to mind is sanctuary. Private reflection is this sacred space, completely free from needing anyone else's nod of approval.
Validation free.
Totally. And in that space, your truest thoughts, the raw, unpolished, maybe even contradictory ones, they just get to be. They can breathe.
Hmm.
And that fosters real integrity because you're not performing. There's no audience. The core questions, what do I really think? What scares me? What do I want? They come from a deeper place, not from trying to look good.
It's like a mental sandbox, right? You can build stuff up, knock it down, try weird ideas without worrying someone will judge the mess.
Precisely. Privacy frees you from that constant pressure to manage your tone, explain yourself, protect how others see you.
Yeah.
You can be confused, angry, grieving, naive, even childish.
Yeah.
Without any shame. And that kind of radical honesty is where real self-awareness starts. Otherwise, reflection can easily slip into just crafting a story about yourself rather than finding the truth.
So the lack of an audience allows for maybe a more truthful conversation with yourself, less filtering.
Absolutely. And it helps with internal alignment, too. When you're not constantly code switching for different people, all the different parts of you can actually talk to each other more honestly.
Mm-hmm.
It's a space to notice, I say I value this, but I keep doing that. You spot the contradictions without needing to immediately fix them, just noticing them privately. That's powerful.
Acknowledging the internal landscape, warts and all, as they say.
Yes, and private reflection respects that. Well, things take time. Not every thought needs to become a polished blog post or a lesson learned.
Right.
Sometimes you just need to mull things over, let them evolve. There's no deadline, no need to show your work. You can stumble, repeat lessons, grow without being watched.
Takes the pressure off growth itself, which can feel very performative sometimes.
It does. And crucially, privacy protects your thoughts from being twisted or simplified. Once something's public, it's open season for interpretation, right? People take it out of context, boil it down.
Yeah, reduce it.
Exactly. Privately, your thoughts stay whole, nuanced. They can evolve slowly without pressure to become a soundbite.
So it's choosing depth over just being seen.
I think so. Our listeners' material even frames it beautifully, private reflection, as a spiritual practice, not performance art. And it calls it revolutionary to just think deeply without tweeting about it or evolve without documenting every single step.
I really like that point, too. Not everything has to become legacy.
Hmm.
Some thoughts are just for the moment, like dreams or, whispered prayers. They do their job and vanish.
It's such a relief, isn't it? This idea that you don't owe your inner world to the internet. It can just be yours. And that final thought in the material, privacy is not hiding, it's honoring, that really hits home.
Yeah.
It reframes it as self-respect, saying my thoughts, my time, my inner process, they matter, whether anyone else sees them or not.
That makes perfect sense. But then there's the pull, isn't there? The pull to share. Our listener mentioned wanting to share for a connection, sparking conversations, even just that satisfaction of tracking reflections, seeing progress. What's driving that impulse?
Well, it seems like for our listener, and maybe for many of us, public reflection can feel like the next step, an evolution, moving beyond just personal healing towards building bridges,
Okay.
seeking resonance maybe, more than just attention, and perhaps creating those time capsules, like you said, leaving something behind.
Though they also flagged the challenges, didn't they? Like just the sheer volume making it hard to go back, or formats not being right, context getting lost.
Oh, absolutely. The pitfalls are real. Misinterpretation, the vulnerability. Knowing your raw thoughts might just be dismissed or ridiculed. It takes courage.
Yeah.
And our listeners' idea of using those AI-powered podcast videos,
Yeah.
that seems like a really creative attempt to tackle some of that, to condense, format, archive, share, but try to keep the essence, creating, as they put it, timeless signals in the noise.
Okay, so let's explore that. What is the real purpose, the power behind taking those private insights and actually making them public?
I think one huge aspect is what the material calls the gift of visibility, or maybe vulnerability. When you share the process, not just the polished result.
Right, the messy middle.
Exactly, the messy middle. You give others a glimpse into a real mind at work, figuring things out. That kind of transparency builds connection because it shows people they're not alone in their own uncertainties or contradictions. It's like saying, hey, this isn't the final word. This is me thinking out loud. Join me.
So it turns the inner monologue into a potential shared language.
Precisely. It creates bridges between our separate little worlds. Your reflection might be a mirror for someone else, or a map, or just a lifeline that helps them name something they're feeling. Even if it's misunderstood sometimes, it still adds to that bigger cultural compost of ideas and experiences. It contributes something.
And there's also that interesting angle about accountability that comes with going public.
Yeah, that's quite striking. Knowing others will see your thoughts makes you perhaps more careful, more considered about how your words might land.
So not self-censorship, but
More like ethical mindfulness, a heightened awareness of impact. And that process can actually sharpen your own thinking, force you to clarify, push you towards a higher standard of integrity. It shifts reflection from being purely introspective to being intersubjective thinking with and about others.
right, considering the impact, the compassion maybe.
Exactly. And thinking about legacy again, public reflection builds a different kind, a legacy of transparency and humanity. It's evidence of a lived mind, someone who thought deeply, struggled, changed their mind, grew. That soul print, as the material calls it, feels very human, especially now. And it's a time capsule for your future self, too.
A record of your own evolution.
And it definitely takes courage, right? Publishing reflections is vulnerable. But that act of sharing, even if few people see it, often comes from a deep human place, that desire to be seen, not as vanity, but as wanting to connect, contribute, find meaning. It's about connection over clicks.
And our listeners stress curation here, not compromise. Choosing what and how to share.
That's key. You don't have to spill everything. Curation is authenticity in this context. Choosing how to frame things, maybe using tools like AI, as our listener is doing, or different personas, shaping the insights so they're true and understandable, legible.
Right, so this doesn't have to be raw to be real.
Exactly. And a public reflection doesn't need to land immediately, does it? It's often about building a body of work, a living archive. Someone might stumble upon it years later, just when they need that exact thought.
So it really feels like there's this interplay, this potential synergy between private and public reflection.
Oh.
They're not mutually exclusive.
Not at all. They feed each other. By documenting their inner world, our listener is creating something potentially valuable for others, that legacy of depth. And the curation, maybe even the AI polish, isn't necessarily diluting it. It could actually be sharpening the essence, catching blind spots, ensuring it's ethically shared.
And I love that phrase this collection is meant to sip, not chug.
Yes,
It encourages a different kind of engagement, doesn't it? Slower, more thoughtful.
it really does. In this incredibly noisy world, maybe the quiet whisper of these kinds of reflections is what actually echoes the longest. And ultimately, whether it reaches 2 people or 2 million, the act itself making the inner world visible has value. It speaks to that need for truth to be seen, even if only by yourself later on, or by one other resonant soul.
The listener's material also touched on some other really interesting angles, like private reflection as relationship maintenance with yourself.
Oh, I like that too. Thinking of it as checking in, noticing neglected feelings, reconnecting with values, maybe even like apologizing to yourself sometimes.
Yeah, or reaffirming your own worth. It makes it feel active, essential.
Very much an act of self-care.
And the digital archive idea, public reflections as existential continuity, a memory prosthetic,
Yeah.
that's powerful imagery.
It really is. Taps into that deep desire for our thoughts and experiences to persist, to have some meaning beyond the moment, and maybe even teach our future selves something.
The point about timing changing meaning was also sharp. How sharing grief right after loss is different from sharing reflections on that grief years later.
Absolutely. Time transforms experience into wisdom, potentially. The reflection gains new layers.
And we should acknowledge the emotional labor involved, right? Putting yourself out there publicly isn't always easy.
Definitely not. And that links to the intimacy gradient idea, too. It's okay, even wise, to be selective. Some thoughts belong in the living room, some at the kitchen table with close friends, and some stay in the locked drawer. That's discernment.
I also found the antiviral concept fascinating. This listener's approach seems deliberately slow, respectful of attention, not designed for quick dopamine hits.
Right?
It makes you question. Is a reflection more meaningful because fewer people see it?
Yeah.
Or less? It challenges the usual metrics.
It really does. And that final framing, seeing reflection, both private and public, as an act of resistance. Resistance against speed, distraction, noise.
A deliberate pause.
A deliberate pause, yeah. An act of interpretation in a world that just wants us to consume. It gives it real weight.
Okay, so pulling this all together,
Yeah.
it feels like private reflection is that crucial sacred space for knowing yourself, for that raw honesty and processing.
The foundation.
And public reflection, when done thoughtfully, becomes about showing yourself, connecting, fostering that ethical awareness, and building a unique kind of transparent legacy.
Exactly. And our listener is navigating this tension with clearly a lot of thought and courage. It's vulnerable work, making the internal visible like that.
So maybe a final thought for you, building on all this. To reflect privately is to truly know yourself. To reflect publicly is to show yourself and trust that someone, somewhere, is listening. Both are worthy. Both are art. And together they form a mirror that doesn't just reflect you, but refracts you into light.
Beautifully put.
We hope this deep dive gives you some useful perspectives as you continue exploring your own reflective practices.